Today at 6, a new Prime Minister, a new cabinet, and the pressure is on to help people with their energy bills. Liz Truss goes to face the House of Commons for the first time as Prime Minister, knowing that the cost of living crisis is the #1 issue. She rejects calls for a windfall tax on the profits of energy firms, probably opting for more borrowing to help people out.
I, as Prime Minister, will take immediate action to help people with the cost of their energy bills and giving people certainty to make sure that they are able to get through this winter.
The money's got to come from somewhere. And she knows that every single pound in excess profits she chooses not to tax is an extra pound on borrowing that working people will be forced to pay back for decades to come.
The first cabinet meeting of the Truss premiership took place earlier. It's said to be the most diverse cabinet on record. We'll have more on the new cabinet and the cost of living crisis as another warning comes on the state of the economy. As business struggles, little can be done to stop the UK falling into recession. That's the verdict of the Bank of England. In Pakistan, the authorities are desperately trying to stop the country's biggest lake from bursting its banks, adding to the devastation caused by the recent floods. And Chelsea Football Club have sacked their manager, Thomas Tuchel, prompting anger from many of the fans.
And coming up on the BBC News Channel, Alex Hales has returned to the England fold for the first time in 3 years when he was dropped because of an off-field incident that has kept him in international exile since.
Good evening. In her very first appearance at Prime Minister's Questions, Liz Truss was asked to spell out how she intends to help millions of households and businesses with their fuel bills. Well, today she ruled out imposing a windfall tax on the big profits of the energy companies to pay for an emergency package. She said that would undermine the plans to grow the economy. But Labour Sir Keir Starmer said the money had to come from somewhere. And he accused the Prime Minister of, in effect, asking working people to foot the bill. Well, the details of the government support scheme are expected tomorrow. Let's go live to Westminster, join our political editor Chris Mason for the latest. Chris?
Huw, today was about the opening skirmishes of tomorrow's argument and this intervention from the government to help with our energy bills, which will shape perceptions of it in at least its early months in office. But there was a focus today as well on the newness around here, the change in the political conversation. The endless questions to those in power.
Can Liz Truss
And the new team tasked with answering them. The Cabinet was told to turn up for a meeting at 8:30 this morning. Some of them had only been officially appointed at nearly 11 o'clock last night. After a summer of visions and promises, the demand to do things and not just talk about them will be immediate for Liz Truss and her government.
Where's your cost of living plan, Prime Minister?
Energy bills for a start, and an announcement is coming tomorrow. But first, a new look, Prime Minister's Questions.
To welcome the new Prime Minister to her place.
I'm honoured to take my place as Prime Minister in this House and to take on responsibility at a vital time for our country. I am determined to deliver for everybody across our United Kingdom. I will work constructively with all members of this House to tackle the challenges we face.
Those opening words carefully prepared, typed out and read from her ring binder.
Keir Starmer.
And the Labour leader faced a new opponent.
Can I congratulate the Prime Minister on her appointment? When she said in her leadership campaign that she was against windfall taxes, did she mean it?
A windfall tax is a one-off tax on companies that have benefited from something they were not responsible for. One was imposed on energy firms in May. Labour, the Liberal Democrats and the SNP want it extended.
Government must announce an enhanced windfall profits tax
making sure that those oil and gas producers pay their fair share from excess profits.
But the Prime Minister repeatedly insisted to the SNP and Labour it was a bad idea.
I am against a windfall tax. I believe it is the wrong thing to be putting companies off investing in the United Kingdom just when we need to be growing the economy.
Gone were the verbal gymnastics of Boris Johnson. Instead, the instinctive dividing lines between the Conservatives and Labour seemed sharper.
Can't she see there's nothing new about a Tory Prime Minister who, when asked who pays, says it's you, the working people of Britain?
Well, there's nothing new about a Labour leader who is calling for more tax rises.
The first full day of doing the job she dreamed of, and the first glimpse too of the new political stage and conversation. It's going to feel different. Chris Mason, BBC News at Westminster.
Well, as we mentioned, Liz Truss has appointed what is said to be the most diverse cabinet in history, with no white men in any of the most senior roles. There's also a cabinet made up of the Prime Minister's closest allies and supporters. Here are some of them. Kwasi Kwarteng, who worked in finance before his time in politics. Well, he's the new Chancellor of the Exchequer. Next door to him, James Cleverly, an Army Reserve officer, former Education Secretary, another big pal of Liz Truss. He's the Foreign Secretary. Then we have Suella Braverman, a barrister who's been, I think it's fair to say, a rather controversial and outspoken Attorney General. That's the new Home Secretary. Therese Coffey, long-time friend of Liz Truss, Health Secretary, and the first female Deputy Prime Minister. Very familiar figure of Jacob Rees-Mogg, prominent Brexit supporter, one of the first MPs to support Liz Truss for the leadership. He's Business and Energy Secretary. Ben Wallace, well, he's a rare creature here. He's staying put in the same job. He was Defence Secretary before. He's still Defence Secretary now. And then we have Chris Heaton-Harris, the new Northern Ireland Secretary, another big Brexiteer, but he'll now have to engage with the European Union in those very challenging negotiations about trade in Northern Ireland. So just a cross-section for you there. Back to Chris at Westminster. Let's talk about the character of this new team. Chris, what do we make of it?
Well, after the first set of appointments last night, Huw, the cabinet was dubbed a ABBA cabinet. The winner takes it all. Almost all of them supporters of Liz Truss. Now today, the Prime Minister has started painting in the canvas a little bit in the background of her government. We've been hearing about more junior appointments, and amongst those there is a smattering of supporters of Rishi Sunak. But what we're hearing consistently from those within Downing Street is a desire for a clearer form of conservatism, perhaps not the kind of conservatism for all colours, for anyone, depending on how they see it, that we might have seen with Boris Johnson, defining his politics quite loosely. Instead, a sense and a focus and a desire for a leaner government, a smaller state. And yet, we stand on the eve of this big intervention in the energy market. Now, the argument from the government is that it's pragmatic, it is necessary, but not necessarily entirely politically consistent with some of the messages we're hearing from Team Truss over the summer. But they know that politically it is necessary because so many people are hurting. And tomorrow marks the first big moment for this government. It'll define their opening weeks, even the opening months, potentially the entire time of the Prime Minister's time in office prior to the next election. That is the scale of the challenge she's confronted by. We'll get the detail tomorrow lunchtime.
Chris, many thanks again. Chris Mason there, our political editor. We're staying on that theme because in that first Prime Minister's questions for Liz Truss, she promised that both business and households would benefit from her energy price plan. As Chris says, it'll be announced tomorrow. It is expected to freeze the energy price cap at around £2,500 for the average household. But the question is, will that be sufficient in terms of a level of support? Our business editor Simon Jack examines the detail.
Heat means energy, means bills, huge bills. Annette Dolan employs 17 people at her glass-blowing business in Bath, but won't for long without an energy lifeline.
My staff are terrified, not only for their domestic bills, but for their jobs. Our gas bill has gone up from 14 grand to 233,000. It's Alice in Wonderland. We cannot exist. And now if the government doesn't take action, businesses will fall like flies.
Annette is not alone. Insolvency experts say over 53,000 substantial businesses, those with over £1 million turnover, more than 10 employees, may fail in the next year.
That is a colossal number of people whose businesses will fail, more than would have failed in the pandemic and more than have ever failed in any previous recession.
The government has promised help is on the way for businesses and households tomorrow. For business, the cost of the energy they use will be reduced and capped. For households, the planned October hike in typical bills from £1,971 to £3,549 will be reduced to a new cap, we think, of around £2,500. With a £400 rebate coming in October and possibly a cut in VAT on energy, bills in October for many households may remain roughly the same as April. The cost of these subsidies could easily exceed £100 billion, which we expect the government to borrow and add to the UK's large and growing debt pile.
Now, the government may think that it's preferable to adding money to consumer bills for the next decade or two, but the interest on that debt already cost us half an NHS per year and is forecast to rise. And while £100 billion definitely helps, bills are much higher than they were before the crisis, and there's no guarantee that people won't go cold hungry or both this winter, and many businesses may still fail. Inflation is brutal. It raises businesses' costs while emptying their customers' pockets, which is why personal finance campaigners welcome these expected measures.
We can argue that they're expensive. They are. We can argue that they're not well targeted. They aren't. But most important is they will fulfil the remit of giving many people a sigh of relief that they are able to pay their energy bills in the short term.
Energy costs are pervasive. They push up the price of everything. If there's a light at the end of the tunnel, it's that if you can cool those, you can cool inflation. Simon Jack, BBC News.
Well, to underline the difficult economic climate, the Governor of the Bank of England has warned that little can be done to stop the UK from falling into a recession. Andrew Bailey said that the conflict in Ukraine was having a huge effect on energy prices. The economy is expected to shrink in the last 3 months of this year and to go on shrinking until the end of next year. So let's put those points to our economics editor, Faisal Islam. Let's talk about the warning, first of all. What do we make of it?
Yeah, sobering words from the Bank of England Governor that in the face of this war, he can't really do much to avoid a recession, and also in the markets. certainly on your first full day in Downing Street, whether you're the Prime Minister or the Chancellor, you wouldn't want the news that was delivered from the foreign exchange markets, which is that the pound sterling, I think we can show a chart here, against the dollar reached its lowest level since 1985 when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister. That's showing the trend over the past year, down about 15%. Now, a lot of that is the dollar being stronger because interest rates in the US are going up faster than they are elsewhere. But the pound has also fallen over that time frame and over a recent time frame against the euro by much smaller amounts. I think in general terms, there's concern about the situation across Europe as regards gas prices and inflation and recession. But even the Bank of England itself said that there were UK-specific factors here, perhaps the hiatus over policymaking in energy over summer, but also the fact that although the UK is not dependent on Russian gas, we are dependent on gas more generally, more than similar economies.
Well, we do have a new Chancellor now who's in place, and obviously that Chancellor will have to work closely with the Governor of the Bank of England. How's that going to pan out?
Yeah, well, we had an early meeting today. I think we'll show you some pictures between the Chancellor and the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey. You can see that there. And they agreed to meet twice weekly. We'll sense, I think, of emergency crisis response is what we're getting here. And this matters because in a situation like this, when you've got inflation really high, but also that risk of recession at the same time, what we call stagflation, the classic response is to get the central bank, the Bank of England, to hit inflation by raising rates, then leave it to the government to help people and households. That is what I think we are getting. So the markets, households, businesses will be watching very carefully for the fine detail of what we get tomorrow.
OK. Faisal, again, thanks. Faisal is on there, our economics editor. Time is 14 minutes past 6. Some news has just come in. We're told by Buckingham Palace that the Queen has postponed her Privy Council meeting, that's with senior ministers, after being advised by doctors to rest. That's what the Queen's staff is saying. Her Majesty, who is 96 and has mobility issues, is still at Balmoral Castle, where she appointed Liz Truss as the new Prime Minister yesterday. That's the residence in Aberdeenshire. The latest advice does not involve a hospital stay, but just to recap, the Queen has postponed the Privy Council meeting today because of advice from doctors. Now, as the cost of living crisis hits more and more households, some schools say that they've become crisis centres for struggling families, but schools are not covered by the energy price cap, and head teachers in England say that they're having to make some rather tough choices, as our correspondent Ellie Price reports now.
I love you. Bye. Love you.
It's Bahira's first day at big school, and she's got a lot on her mind.
Maybe not fitting in, just like being the odd one out and stuff.
Lucy's worried too.
The work being too hard.
For their mums, the new term can be an expensive time.
My son started when it was year 7, and obviously with COVID, he didn't get to use his uniform to the full potential, so I managed to keep hold of it for her. Going forward, it will be a concern financially.
She needs to eat in school because I think it will be cheaper to eat in school than to bring packed lunches, you know.
I'm always really excited at the start of a term. It's always brilliant to welcome the students back.
And for Rachel Hallam, their new head teacher, the class of 2023 isn't going to be an easy one.
The looming energy crisis, changes to the examinations for 2023 are a concern for our students. We're bracing ourselves potentially for another year where COVID comes back, staff absence.
Rachel says teachers have already left because they can't afford the higher petrol prices to commute. But it's the students and their parents in this already deprived area she worries about the most.
Some of our students come here and for them this is the only time that they have warmth, heating, and I do think that there's more and more emphasis on schools becoming centres to support families and becoming crisis centres almost to support with absolutely everything.
These are going to be more efficient than the boilers that we had before?
They're going to be more efficient for the heating.
Up in Malton, North Yorkshire, they're doing what they can at Norton College. Their gas bills have soared, they say, by 373%. There's another worry too, higher than expected pay rises for teachers and support staff set by the government in July that they hadn't budgeted for this year.
I've taught for 30 years, I've never experienced anything like this. We are all faced with this potentially catastrophic shortfall in our finances. We are all looking at ways by which to balance our budgets. None of us has a single silver bullet here because there isn't one.
A massive welcome. Hurrah, you finally made it.
The Department for Education says it's increasing core funding by £4 billion this year alone and providing schools with tools to help them get the best value for money from their resources, including recommended deals for energy costs.
These are your year 7 ties.
Back in Oldham, the students are getting to grips with the same old challenges, but their teachers are trying to find new ways to do more with less. Ellie Price, BBC News, Oldham.
Time is 18 minutes past 6, and our main story this evening. Liz Truss has gone to face the House of Commons for the first time as Prime Minister, with the cost of living crisis as the #1 issue. And coming up, inside the prehistoric cave in Indonesia, where a discovery has changed our understanding of human surgery.
Coming up in Sports Day on the BBC News Channel, Barcelona break the women's world transfer record to sign Manchester City's Keira Walsh, the player at the heart of England's midfield, in their winning run at the Euros for around £400,000.
More than 1,300 people have died in Pakistan's flooding disaster, which saw a third of the country badly affected. Now, the authorities are desperately trying to stop the country's biggest lake from bursting its banks. It is Lake Manchar, putting tens of thousands of local residents at risk. If we look at this satellite image, it shows the lake as it was in late June. That was just before the rains took over. And this is how it's grown. It's almost tripled in size, as we can see, after the deluge. And our Pakistan correspondent, Pumza Fihlani, reports now from Islamabad.
Sindh province is still drowning. It has not rained for days, but most of the land remains waterlogged. On the shoreline, the boats are still coming. The dangers of Manchar Lake have been contained for now, authorities say. Its banks were deliberately breached to protect urban areas and what remains of the damaged infrastructure there. But the threat is not over, and rescue teams are now working on evacuating thousands stranded in their villages. 125,000 people have been affected by the overflow water. The people whose homes were sacrificed have been left with nothing.
My brother just died in my village because of the water that came. We thought we were going to be able to save him, but we couldn't. Around 20 people are still stranded there. Some are unconscious, some are just sitting waiting for help.
Water levels in Pakistan's biggest lake are starting to recede, officials have told the BBC. But as an additional measure, they are reinforcing flood dikes in the area. As rescue efforts continue, authorities are also under pressure to rebuild what has been lost. Climate Change Minister Sherry Rehman told the BBC that Pakistan will need international expertise.
So we're going to have to do some very important thinking, not just on our own, but with climate specialists really for infrastructure. Key communication lines naturally have to be restored, the railways have to be restored, all of that. So they've already started their reconstruction, and I was thinking because it has to happen, people have to cross over. Most of it will not be resilient. We neither have the money or the technical capacity at this point.
Building with the future in mind may be a luxury for those whose entire livelihoods have been lost to the floods. For now, those who make it out of these treacherous waters are troubled by uncertainty, where they will sleep and what they will eat. Pumza Fihlani, BBC News, Islamabad.
Back in the UK, the family of a 23-year-old man who was shot dead by police in South London are accusing the Metropolitan Police of racism. Chris Kaba was killed in a residential street in Streatham Hill on Monday night following a police chase. The police watchdog, who are now investigating, say a single shot was fired from a police gun. Our correspondent Greg Mackenzie has more details.
A family still coming to terms with the killing of their son, 23-year-old Chris Kaba, who died following a police chase on Monday night. Officers say they used a tactic where they deliberately collided with the Audi he was driving to make him stop, and then Chris was shot.
Really, we are shocked to see that in this century, from specialists of the law like police can shortcut someone's life, especially a young boy.
There are tensions in the black community in South London, all demanding answers. Chris Kaba was due to become a father within months. He was well known locally by his rap artist name Maddox.
My heart is broken. I was speechless. My heart is broken. Police is taking Chris from me. I don't know how to say, but I need justice to be done. The justice to be done for Chris. This is very racist. It's not good.
The Metropolitan Police has expressed its condolence to the family, but says it won't be commenting any further as the shooting is being investigated by the independent police watchdog, the IOPC.
Where are you, my son? Where are you, my...
But the family say they want answers and are accusing the Metropolitan Police of racism. They want more details as to the circumstances behind the killing of their much-loved son, who they claim was unarmed. Greg Mackenzie, BBC News.
In Indonesia, scientists have discovered the ancient remains of a young person in a remote cave, showing what they believe to be the earliest evidence of surgical amputation. The remains are around 31,000 years old, which means the amputation was carried out some 24,000 years earlier than the previous estimate. Our science correspondent Victoria Gill has the story.
Home to our ancestors. These remote caves in Indonesian Borneo are adorned with some of the world's earliest rock art. But when archaeologists went in search of other signs of prehistoric life, they found something unexpected. A human skeleton carefully buried inside a cave with its left foot missing. Forensic inspection revealed what the researchers say is the first evidence of surgical amputation of a limb, carried out 31,000 years ago when this person was a child.
This is, very clear surgical technique that's been done. It's concrete evidence in the most extreme and, clear way. Very advanced surgery would have been required for this child to have survived. And if that's the case, people are sharing knowledge, people are learning and questioning their environment like they are like scientists do today.
A detailed examination concluded that the person depicted here in an artist's impression lived for up to 9 years after their surgery, dying in their late teens or early 20s.
I think our ancestors were as caring as we are today, and hopefully we will be in the future. I don't think we can underestimate our ancestors. We have this idea that we know it all today, but I think they can teach us a lot about who we are today and what we might be in the future.
The team plan to search this treasure trove of human archaeology to find out what methods and perhaps what stone surgical tools might have made this prehistoric medical feat possible. Victoria Gill, BBC News.
Chelsea have suddenly sacked their manager Thomas Tuchel after their third defeat of the season. He has led the club to win 3 trophies in his 20 months in charge, but it's believed that he'd lost the confidence of the squad and the board in recent times. Our sports editor Dan Rowan is at Chelsea's ground, Stamford Bridge in West London, and this is his report.
They may have just spent a record £250 million on new players, but it was clear last night that not all was well at Chelsea.
In consultation there, Tuchel. You're not happy at all tonight.
Best coaches seemed ruthless. In a statement, Chelsea said, as the new ownership group reaches 100 days since taking over the club, and as it continues its hard work to take the club forward, the new owners believe it's the right time to make this transition.
This is a huge underperformance from all of us. It's not precise enough, it's not clinical enough, it's not aggressive enough on the ball, it's not determined enough.
It was only last year that Tuchel led Chelsea to Champions League glory, just months after taking over. More trophies followed, the German gaining praise for his calm leadership during the club's sale by Roman Abramovich after the Russian oligarch was sanctioned by the government. But amid suggestions the manager had lost the faith of some players, new owner American Todd Burley wasted little time in making a change that's proved hugely controversial.
Yeah, very surprised and also disappointed because I want the managers to stay in their job. It's a difficult job, but I think we all also understand that it probably comes to us all at some time.
Having spent more than £100 million on paying off a host of sacked managers during the Abramovich era, Chelsea now face the prospect of another massive severance package for Tuchel, and that's before they shell out on a replacement. Yeah, new American owners, but an all too familiar sense of turbulence here at Stamford Bridge. And even Abramovich never sacked a manager as early as just 33 days into a new season. Now, the club insists this makes sense, but at a time when the public are feeling the pinch, I think many will find it hard to comprehend the amounts of money that are spent on sacking managers and on a record transfer window, which closed last week, of course. And now Chelsea is set for talks with Graham Potter. And if, as expected, he's the favourite, they do recruit him, no doubt his club Brighton will be wanting many millions more pounds in compensation.
Indeed, Dan, many thanks again. Dan Rowan, our sports editor there at Stamford Bridge. It's 28 minutes past 6 and it's time to join Chris, who's with me with the latest on the weather. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Hugh. Well, we've seen lots of storms over recent days. There are more of those to come as well. Look at this Weather Watch picture sent to us in the last half hour. This shows a lightning bolt flashing across the skies above Liverpool. There's the Liver building there. And we've got more of these storms to come. Now, quite often, storms are quite localised, but what we've seen over recent days and nights is storms that have been stretching for hundreds of miles. These are being more organised, coming in on troughs caused by this area of low pressure that continues to spin to the south of the Republic of Ireland, throwing these trough features across the country. And right now, we've got another clump of really active storms going across North Wales, stretching into the North West Midlands, Northwest England too. And that's where the most spectacular displays of lightning are going to be heading overnight tonight, eventually probably reaching parts of southern Scotland. Could see a few more storms, maybe across parts of southeast England, some clearer slots here and there. And then the rain turns heavier later in the night across central and eastern parts of Scotland. Temperatures about 12 to 14 degrees, give or take. A few mist and fog patches around as well. And then tomorrow, it's another unsettled day. The rain could be heavy enough in Scotland to cause some localised surface water flooding issues. Otherwise, a very similar kind of day with sunshine, showers widespread, And most of you will see more than 1 or 2 downpours during the day, those showers turning thundery as we head into the afternoon. But still, between the downpours and the sunshine, it will continue to feel pretty warm. The winds continue to be light. Friday is another unsettled day with further showers widely. Some prolonged outbreaks of rain possible, though, across eastern areas of Scotland. Again, there could be 1 or 2 issues here with rainfall amounts just building up for a time. Heading into the weekend, it looks like at least Saturday should be a drier and quieter kind of day for most parts of the country, but rain returns as we head into Monday. It's a similar story further southwards across England and Wales, a drier slice of weather, but then the rain returns and could become really quite heavy, particularly across some western areas. It's all about the storms, Huw. There'll be loads of them tonight.
We've been warned. Thanks a lot, Chris. Chris there with the latest on the weather. That's BBC News at 6 on the 7th of September. Don't forget, have a look at BBC Online. All the latest analysis and developments there for you, building on today's news stories. And, of course, across the nations and regions, our colleagues waiting with the news where you are. But from all of us here on BBC News at 6, thanks for watching and goodbye for now.